Welcome boys and girls from YouTube. My name is Sloth, this is the Sloth Forger, and thanks a lot for stopping by on today's video. In today's video I want to talk about Perkunte a little bit, because in the upcoming banner we will have the possibility to go for Perkunte or Slate. We can guarantee ourselves Perkunte after 300 summons, and I think a lot of you now have the question if it is worth it to go for Perkunte or not. So this is why in today's video I want to give you an in-depth guide on Perkunte, not only for Perkunte, but also just for the Thunderbolt faction, for this Thunderbolt school in general. So let's get into this. First, let's talk about his skills. And before we can talk about his skills, we have to talk about the Thunderbolt school in general a little bit. Because what do they actually do? If we compare them to Dauntless, they are quite different. When it comes to Dauntless, all we want to do is just to launch, to trigger as many basic attacks as somehow possible. When it comes to Thunderbolt, this is quite different. We are now no longer a single target school, while Thunderbolt is more of an AoE school actually. So, by the way, Thunderbolt is going to be very, very good on PvP. Just because it can deal so high amounts of AoE damage. So, now, what does Thunderbolt? There are some new kind of debuffs that we are now involved into the game. First, it is the electrocuted debuff. But this is not mandatory to... Because, okay, let's start with the lightning chains. Because this is actually all what those heroes are around. They are all focused around those lightning chains. And you want to hit an enemy, and then those lightning chains, they start to chain. They can chain basically 3 times, but in theory up to 10 times. It depends a little bit on your setup. And every single time that they jump or that they chain, every additional chain will reduce their damage by 20%. So it's just a typical chain lightning. You know this mechanic probably from other games as well. So this is pretty similar. Now, it says that we can increase the times that it chains. And this depends a little bit on what debuffs did we inflict on the target first. If we first inflict the electrocuted debuff on the target, then there will be 1 additional bounce. So the number of lightning chain bounces increases by 1. So the more electrocuted you inflict on the enemy team, the more your lightning chains are going to bounce, and the more overall damage they are going to deal. So this is just the basic idea. But to trigger those lightning chains, or to activate those lightning chains, you don't have to inflict the electrocuted debuff, because there are a lot of skills that can just trigger the lightning chain on their own, and you don't have to inflict the electrocuted debuff every single time. Because the first thing that you actually will recognize when you play a little bit around with the Thunderbolt school is that those electrocuted debuffs, they have not a long uptime. Once they are up, it just takes a couple of seconds and they get immediately consumed by a hero or by a lightning chain actually. So in theory, you want to bring a lot of electrocuted because you can consume it quite frequently. So then also when it comes to those Thunderbolt schools, we have those Thunderbolt energies. They just work as an additional target for your lightning chains, but they don't consume any chain count, and instead of decreasing your damage, they increase your damage once the lightning chain passes through those Thunderbolt energies. So, and when you bring 3 Thunderbolt school heroes to your team, then you have 2 of those Thunderbolt energies that you can just freely place anywhere on the board. Just as 2 additional units. They don't do so much, but they help you to deal additional damage. So that's it. Now let's talk about his skills. First, he has a quite useful aura. It is only for arena, but 30% increased attack is quite good. And as I said, in arena, Perkunte or Thunderbolt in general is quite strong right now. Not only now, by the way, in Season 3, Thunderbolt will also be very, very strong in arena. So yeah, keep this in mind. Let's talk about the skills. First, the passive skills. Whenever an ally triggers a lightning chain, there is an additional chance to triggering additional lightning bolt and dealing a little bit of derivative damage. This is something that I absolutely forgot to mention. Those lightning chains, they actually trigger, they actually deal derivative damage. So instead of building crit rate and crit damage on our Thunderbolt heroes, what we want to do is to build them with attack and enlightenment. because their main damage comes from those derivative damage sources. So absolutely no questions asked. We want them to have high attack, high enlightenment, no crit at all. And then yeah, every single time a lightning chain is triggered, he just deals a little bit of additional damage. So this is his passive. Then his battle skill, also actually nothing too complicated, nothing special. He deals a quite good amount of damage, of lightning damage, to all enemies in this range, this quite good AoE range. And then he has a 75% chance, up to 100%, of triggering one lightning chain. That's it pretty much with his battle skill. And then his ultimate. This is the bread and butter, or not the bread and butter actually, because his passive also is a very big part of Perkunte. But this is like his signature move. He attacks all enemies, so the whole board, and all enemies he attacks them twice. This is quite cool, also aesthetically a very, very cool skill. Also it scales quite good as well. 240% of attack, 2400% of enlightenment, and it hits twice. So you can double those numbers up for the final damage that this ultimate is going to deal. Then the first hit has a 100% chance of inflicting electrocuted for 8 seconds, which does not matter because he can actually consume those on his own as well. So as I said, you will probably never see those electrocuted debuffs go off because of time. If those debuffs go off because of timing, because no one in your team is consuming those electrocuted debuffs, then you have to change your team around a little bit. You always want to bring enough heroes and maybe to sync it correctly so that those electrocuted debuffs, they always have to be consumed for increased damage. And then yeah, his second hit can trigger up to 2 lightning chains. Now, in theory, we can build him with accuracy to inflict his electrocuted debuff. It's a little bit like it is with Lothar. Lothar also, in theory, we could build him with accuracy, but we don't want to. We want other heroes in the team to bring the needed debuffs, poison when it comes to Lothar, or electrocuted when it comes to Perkunte. And then we want him just to deal the maximum amount of damage. So we want to build him only with attack and enlightenment. But there is another reason why we don't want to build Perkunte with any accuracy. It's because of the talents. He has the exclusive talent where when he is inflicting electrocuted with his ultimate skill, it 100% ignores the target resistance, which means that he always inflicts the electrocuted debuff unless there are some debuff immunity skills buffs up on the enemy team. So this is the reason why we never build him with accuracy, never ever. We just build him with full attack, full enlightenment. And yeah, that's it pretty much when it comes to the skills. So next, let's talk about the gear. When it comes to the gear, there's actually nothing too special. It's quite straightforward. For the bottom row, we want to go, it depends a little bit. First, we want, of course, the imposing presence, attack percent, with as much enlightenment sub-rolls as possible for the gloves. When it comes to the chest, there are 2 different options. You definitely want enlightenment as your main stat, but there are 2 very strong pieces, set effects for the bottom row. The strike, the unprepared set is quite good. Now the imposing presence is quite good. And then also the stonebreaker is quite good. For PvP, this is not so good because you won't inflict a lot of debuffs before the fight is over. But for PvE, the stonebreaker set is also a quite good set. But in general, I would probably recommend to go with the strike, the unprepared, and the imposing presence for the bottom row. And for the top row, you definitely want the Skyfire Sunset. It is such a strong item for all Thunderbolt heroes, not only Thunderbolt heroes, but also for burn heroes and poison heroes. So definitely a very, very strong new set, the Skyfire Sun. And then also for the top row, you want the Bloodshade Mark, in my opinion, because it is also a very, very strong new set. You can also go with the Fearless Challenge, also a quite good set effect. Now, when it comes to the artifacts, there are different options, a lot of different options. I had quite good results with the Tempest War Drum. It had a quite good amount of damage that we dealt with this artifact. It was quite impressive, actually. Also, of course, the Crown of Order, his exclusive artifact. Of course, it just fits perfectly. But I think not many of you have actually this artifact. And if you're not sure if you want to go for his exclusive artifact, I would wait a little bit. I would wait for more testing. But I personally, I would not recommend you to go for his exclusive artifact. It will help you to deal more damage, but it's just the same as it is with Nestyanka, for example. She really benefits from having her exclusive artifact, but it is not groundbreaking. It's not like it is with Galvanis, for example, or Flora, where you will just double your damage. In my opinion, or what I found out from testing, it's only around 20 to 30% more damage in comparison to the Tempest War Drum. Probably a bit more, thanks to better stats. And if you build the best possible team with the best in slot items, then maybe this is a bigger gap. Maybe you reach like a 40% damage increase with the Crown of Order. But just in general, I think, at least if you are free to play or a low spender, then I would not recommend you to go for his artifact as well, because there are so many strong artifacts that you can use on him. For example, the Tempest War Drums. But you can also use some other artifact for PvP. You could also use the Darkthorn Claw, because in general this is an extremely strong PvP artifact, because ignoring shields is so crucial sometimes, especially when they are using like a Fallujah, for example. Then ignoring those shields is extremely strong. So this is definitely one of the strongest PvP artifacts out there. Now the problem is that this effect only works with direct damage, so the damage that he directly deals with his ultimate. But from those lightning chains, or also from his lightning bolts, this does not work in combination with his artifact. So the lightning bolts and lightning chains, they still hit the shields first, and they don't ignore the shields. So this is not the option, the perfect item for him. It is okayish, it is decent, but it is not the perfect item for PvP. In PvP, you also prefer the Tempest War Drum over anything else. Of course, the best in slot is his exclusive artifact, but apart from that, the Tempest War Drum is absolutely fine for PvP and PvE as well. So yeah. But of course, in general, the Darkthorn Claw is a very strong item. The other downside of this item is that it provides crit rate, which is just a wasted stat because we don't need any crit rate. And as you can see here, now 1000 attack for crit rate, what we don't need, is not so good, honestly. So the Tempest War Drum is definitely your go-to artifact if you don't want to go for his exclusive artifact. Also, just to show you one super budget version, you can also use the Eyeball of the Giant. It is not the best in slot item, definitely not, because a big amount of his damage comes from lightning chains, lightning bolts, but it is still a quite good item for your Perkunte. But you should probably, if you want to use your Perkunte, then you should aim for the Tempest War Drum sooner or later. And that's it pretty much when it comes to the artifacts. Now let's talk about the talents just real quick, and then we talk about some recommended teammates or just some teams built around Perkunte. Now his talents are quite straightforward. We just want to increase his damage as good as somehow possible. Also, the best way to increase his damage actually is just to increase his enlightenment, because as most of those derivative damage dealers, he scales extremely well with enlightenment once again. Also, we just want him to deal increased damage to enemies who are inflicted with electrocuted, and then of course we take his exclusive talent so that he always inflicts electrocuted with his first ultimate skill. So on his first hit, he inflicts electrocuted so that he can directly consume electrocuted and deal an insane amount of damage with his ultimate. And yeah, that's it pretty much when it comes to his talents. Now you could go with other talents as well, but those are the talents that I find the best for him. I had the best success with those talents, and it is also what I saw from other people as well. Most of them used those exact talents. But of course, especially when it comes to talents, it always depends a little bit on where exactly you want to use the hero. Also, it depends a little bit on the team that you build around your hero. And you can always just swap them around, test out some different things. So yeah, always take this with a grain of salt. Just try around a little bit on your own. But especially when it comes to the final talent, then I would definitely go with its exclusive talent, because it is so strong. And yeah, that's it pretty much when it comes to Perkunte. Now we can talk about some teams built around Perkunte. Now, especially for PvP, as I said, he is a very, very strong hero. Now let me think, how can I showcase you? I prepared one PvP team, which is just as an idea. You don't have to use this particular team, but it is a quite cool team actually. And as always, there is room for improvement. It always depends a little bit on where you want to use this team, against what opponents or what enemy team you want to use this team. but in general, this is a very cool team. You use Perkunte as your main DPS. Your second DPS is Synergies. He is also an extremely strong damage dealer. As you can see, he scales very well, like 500% attack, 5000% enlightenment, very good range as well. So Synergies is a very, very strong hero. As your second DPS, you can absolutely use him, but you have to be aware of that he is melee, so he dies quite frequently. This is the only downside of Synergies. Then we use Ogog as our support hero, because this immortality buff can be so good, and since those Perkunte teams, they want to be very fast, you won't, if it takes you 1 or 2 minutes to win with a Perkunte team, then you're doing something wrong. You most likely will not survive 1 or 2 minutes. Your goal with those Perkunte teams is just to kill your opponent within 30 seconds. After the first ultimate, in the best case scenario, after the second use of his ultimate, the enemy team has to be down. If not, then you most likely will not win the fight, at least if you use this particular team. Then we use Nissa. I use her with Witch Remains, but you can definitely use other artifacts on her as well. I just use her with Witch Remains because she has a AoE ultimate, and so she inflicts the death penalty quite frequently, quite reliable, so that Perkunte can deal even more damage. And then as our main tank, we are using Malak, but there are other very strong options here as well. For example, you could use Urgander or Thunderbolt, two very strong options as well. And of course, if you have access to Krishna, like this, the lightning exclusive support hero, then definitely, no questions asked, you should use Krishna. He is so strong. But yeah, since he is an exclusive support hero, he is extremely rare and not many of you will probably have him. So then I would use Urgander, Malak or Thunderbolt. Also 3 very, very strong options here as well. And that's pretty much the PvP team. Now for PvE, as I said, it depends. It highly depends on your team and where you want to use them. Especially for most areas, actually, there are better heroes out there, better teams out there. But you can clear many areas, especially for Grave of Venom, for example. You can absolutely use your Perkunte and probably have a lot of fun with him. So, because he can kill those ads so frequently, so fast, and every single time one of those wisps, one of those ads dies, the harpy takes a little bit of damage. So Perkunte, especially there, can be quite good, and I'm very sure that a lot of those speedrunning teams are going to use Perkunte once again, at least for the Grave of Venom. When it comes to Grave of Rot, then it is probably better to go with the Dauntless team, but yeah, we will see, only time will tell. And yeah, I think that's it pretty much. I really hope that I've mentioned everything. If there's something that you want to know, if there's something you want to add, whatever, please let me know in the comments below, and I will add all your input in the pinned comment below if there is something important that I forgot, or that you just have something important to note that I didn't talk about at all. But yeah, that's it pretty much for today. Thank you very much for stopping by, and see you in the next one.